My name is Christine Krieger, and I am the Professional Development Consultant for the Colorado State Library, and I want to welcome you to our CSLN session today, Executive Function, Building Core Capabilities for Life. Before we get started, I wanted to briefly introduce you to CSLN session in case you haven't had a chance to attend before. You might be very used to webinars where you kind of have one direction, the speaker's kind of talking at you for the entire session, but we like to shake things up a little bit, and so there will be opportunities for you guys to engage with the presenter as well as with each other throughout today's session, so we hope that you take advantage of that, because really we're all in this learning together. So the main way that you will communicate today is via the chat in the lower left-hand corner. Many of you have taken the opportunity to introduce yourself. If you haven't yet had a chance, please do so. We love seeing who is joining us and where you guys are logging in from. And then as we go through, we'll have a couple other ways that we're going to try to engage with you today. It is possible, I haven't seen yet, that we may have live transcription for this session. I have not yet seen the transcriptionist log in, and we have gotten word that they were having a little bit of trouble with Adobe Connect. So if it does happen, I will make sure to let you guys know. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, in the upper left-hand corner under attendees where it says Colorado State Library, that is me, you can hover over that and send me a private message if you're having some audio issues or something else. We are also recording today's session, and it should be available on the CSLN session website probably within a couple hours of ending the session today. So without further ado, it is my distinct honor to introduce Lisa Dingerink, who is an early learning librarian for the Denver Public Library. And I think I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today on your lunch hours of no other. I'm hoping you guys are getting to eat while you're doing this. So just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Lisa Dingerink. I'm an early learning librarian at Denver Public Library, and I've been there for almost 8 years now, which is just crazy to me. But I do have a background in education as well as libraries. So I've been in the library world for almost 15 years now, and before that I was a kindergarten teacher. So I've seen a lot of this stuff in action. And I have 2 children myself. So I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, which has been quite the adventure in the last 9 months, I guess we've been in this now. So we are just going to just go through all of this stuff, talking about executive function and really like digging into what it is and the importance of it. I've really seen the importance of all of this development with kids and how important it is for them to develop these skills early in life through my own children and also watching just children in general. So I really feel it's important for us to really think about it and try to build these capabilities for kids. So here we go. So the true definition of executive function is it's a group of 3 skills that enable people to organize, plan, and carry out a set of tasks in an efficient manner. And all 3 of those are really important because, we see all the time kids and adults for that matter, people being able to do things, but they don't always go through all the process to actually organize their thoughts, plan them, and then carry out them. Oftentimes people are doing 1 or 2 of those things and not doing all 3 together. So it's important to think about all 3 of the things together. So it's really all about thinking, planning, and doing. And don't forget to stop. So yeah. So we're going to go over each of these specifically. So the 3 skills are working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. So those 3 things work together to create what we call executive function. And we're going to go into each one of those. And it's important to remember as we go through, I'm actually clicking on the wrong slides over here. I'm clicking on my own screen. Let's go to try that again. So now you can actually see it's all about working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. So, okay. So children are not born with these skills. They are born with the potential to develop them. These are not things that are innately in kids. It's really important to understand that these are things that kids have to learn and develop. And without the assistance of an adult, it's really hard to develop this. And it's also important that the adults model this behavior for kids, because if we're not modeling it, just like with any other task, they're not going to learn it. So we need to make sure that we are modeling those behaviors for kids so they can understand them and learn them themselves. So the first step in this is working memory. So this is the ability to remember and use relevant information while in the middle of an activity. So thinking through those things of what am I actually doing right now and what am I supposed to be doing? I know we've all had that experience of not being able to remember what you were doing right in the middle of the task. And I know this gets worse with age. I've had that experience a lot recently. So it's, we oftentimes, we all have that discussion of, I went upstairs and I was going to do something and then I couldn't remember what I was doing. It's the same thing for kids. They have to remember how to do those things. So it's remembering those steps in a recipe. How many of you guys, and you can raise your hand, throw it in the chat, whatever, have had that experience when you're baking something and you're like, I know that I need like a teaspoon or a tablespoon, but I can't remember which it is. And you have to go back to the recipe and do it all again. So we have to remember those skills in the middle of all of this and have that working memory. And the more we use our working memory, the better and more efficient it is. So I know that we all used to remember when we were kids and we had to learn people's phone numbers, right? I don't have to do that anymore. So it's not something that I have built in my working memory to remember those numbers anymore. And so it's definitely a very much a practicing situation. If you don't practice these things, it doesn't continue to happen. This also is another example is recalling the rules of a game. So remembering that, okay, so I'm playing Uno with my kids. I need to remember what the rules of the game are and then be able to restate those rules to your kids or have them restate those rules to you. So when you're in the middle of the game and you throw down that card and everybody's like, what does that one mean? Huh? Oh yeah, that's a skip one. So it's recalling those rules while you're in the middle of it. It's also following instructions. I know you guys probably, those of you with kids have to go through this every single morning of put on your shoes, put on your coat, and maybe get a hat. But now we also have to add that extra thing in of get a mask, right? I used to have the saying in my head whenever I left the house, wallet, keys, phone, wallet, keys, phone. And so remembering that, but now I also have to remember wallet, keys, phone, mask. And so it's adding those little things on and building that working memory and adding on instructions. When kids are really young, they are only able to follow one instruction at a time. So when kids are between 1 and 2 years old, usually they can only follow one instruction. But then as they get older, they're going to be able to follow more and more instructions. So by the time they're in kindergarten, sometimes they can do like full 4 to 5 different steps in an instruction and be able to do it. But it takes practice. So we have to remember that all of this takes practice, and we can't just expect these kids to immediately know what we expect and follow those instructions before they've ever done something before. You have to build that ability to be able to do it. So we can't really play Simon Says today because I can't actually see you guys. But an example of this, a great example of this is Simon Says. So if I were to tell you to put your hand on your head, but Simon didn't say it, you're not going to put your hand on your head. But you don't, if you didn't know the rules to that game, and I just said, we're playing Simon Says, you would be like, huh? I don't know how to play that game. So you have to explain those rules, and then you have to then you have to do the game again. And it's important to remember that when you're playing games, like Simon says, and you have kids getting out in the game, so they have to go sit down and not play anymore, they're not learning how to do the things. So Simon Says is a really, really great example of this, because when you're playing Simon Says and you just send a kid that out, they're not continuing to get the practice to learn how to do this activity. So it's great to be able to have them just move to the side. They get to continue to play, but they don't get to win the game. So just think about little things like that when you're playing games like that, to remember that they need that practice to be able to play and learn how to do this. So. And Ruby, I really like, Josie and Ruby, I guess it is. I really like your mention that you have a song that you sing it to yourself in the morning before you leave the house. That's nice. Songs definitely help with your working memory. Okay, so we're going to throw it in the chat now of what can you do, or what you already do to help children build their working memory. So I want you to just throw it out there, throw it in the chat. And this could be something that you do in the library, or it could be something that you do at home, whatever it is. Yes, asking the kids what comes next in a routine is a great way to build their working memory, because it makes them think through what they have to do. Practicing that game over and over is really important to do. Oh, I like that you made a song to your phone number. That's a great way for kids to learn how to do that stuff. I used to have a kid when I taught kindergarten, and her last name was Pokshavinsky. And so they had actually made up a song to be able to help her learn how to spell her last name. And I think I'm going to actually have to do the same thing with my kids too. Okay, it looks like everybody added things in there already. Okay, so some ideas for building working memory that we can do in the library, especially in story times and other early learning programming. So for those babies, peekaboo is fantastic for building that working memory, because when you play peekaboo with a young baby, they don't think you're there anymore. Like, they legit think that you are just disappeared and gone when you're playing peekaboo. So helping to build that understanding that you are still there is a really important aspect of peekaboo. Hiding toys is similar. If you hide that toy in the couch, they're going to think it disappeared. But having them have that ability to try to remember where you hid that toy in the couch, so they will see you hide that toy in the couch, and they're just like, it disappeared, it's gone. But then having them build that ability to be able to find that toy is really important. Singing songs is so important for building that working memory. And these can be all the songs that we sang as kids. And think about it, that you know those songs, even if you haven't sung them in a very, very long time, you will remember those songs too. So a mom who hasn't sung those songs in like 20 years, she's going to remember the tune or the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes if she sang it enough when she was a kid. Finger plays is another great one. And this also joins the language as well as the movement. And that builds the working memory even more effectively, because you're joining the two together. So you have the finger play and you're moving your hands, but you're probably moving your hands to a specific movement that makes sense for the song or the activity. And so those two things together really help build working memory. And just the basic thing of naming objects. So when they're pointing to things, tell them what it is. Use the real words and then explain what it is if it's a really complicated thing. Okay, so the next one is for toddlers. So songs with actions are so fantastic. Just like with those finger plays, it's really building the two pieces together. So we're building both pieces at the same time. Games that copy actions is a really good one for those toddlers as well. So we want to show them actions and play games that they're going to copy what you're doing. So the hokey pokey is a perfect example of this because they're having to put their right hand in and their right hand out. Well, when you're doing these games, make sure that you use what is called opposition or just mirroring them. That's a really hard word to say today. So instead of when you're facing them and you put your right hand in, you need to say your left arm in. It's really confusing the first time you do it, but it's important to do so that way they are actually doing the right arm because they don't know their rights and lefts yet. So they're just mirroring everything that you do. Finger plays, again, are really important. And then imaginary play is fantastic for building working memory because most of the time when those kids are playing imaginary play games, they're copying what the adults in their lives do. So this is a big thing during for story times. How many of you guys, you can raise your hand, you can just throw it in the chat. How many of you guys have had that parent or that grown up come to you and be like, so I had to play story time today? They're copying all those actions that you're doing in story time. And sometimes they'll be the leader. Sometimes they'll actually sit and listen to their grown-up read the story, just like in story time. And this is so important for kids to be able to do. They're copying all of those things that we're doing as adults. That's how kids learn how to cook. That's how kids learn to be grown-ups, is through their imaginary play. So they're building that working memory and that understanding of how to do things through that imaginary play. Oh, there. And then finally with preschoolers, to build that working memory, it's important to build their background knowledge. So teaching them things about things that they may not have exposure to, or just experiencing things in their world and talking about those things. So, you know, most of us live in Colorado, and we're in a landlocked state. Does that mean that we shouldn't teach kids about the ocean and ocean creatures? Absolutely not, because it builds their background knowledge and then they have that understanding of what they need to know for other things. So when they get to kindergarten or first grade and they're learning more about those ocean creatures or reading books about those ocean creatures, then they already have that knowledge and that understanding of what it is, and they have that experience. Or when they finally do get to go to the beach or the ocean, they're going to have that understanding of what it is. And so they have that concept, and it so helps them build some of those social stories of understanding what's going to happen in any given situation. Letting their children tell their own stories is really, really important for those preschoolers. Letting them tell their pretend stories or what's happening in their lives, because that's building their working memory by understanding what happened in their life and the steps that happened to make that work. So they're learning that beginning, middle, and end and how a story works, but also how life works because they're telling their own stories. One of the favorite games that we play, it's not really a game, an activity that we do at dinner every night, is when we are sitting and eating, we do what's the best part of your day, what's the hardest part of your day, and what was the silliest part of your day. So the kids can tell their own stories about their day and think through what they did today. And then it also helps them to solidify those things that they did in their day and solidify the information that they learned through whatever activity that they did. And then songs that add movements. So again, the hokey pokey is a great example of this, where you're adding a different movement in there each verse. Or Tootie-Ta is also a fantastic one with this because it adds on another movement every time you sing it. And for those of you who don't know Tootie-Ta, it goes, I'll just do two verses of it. So it goes Tootie-Ta, a Tootie-Ta, a Tootie-Ta-Ta. and you have to dance while doing this. A tootie-ta, a tootie-ta, a tootie-ta-ta. And then you do thumbs out, thumbs up, and the kids repeat everything that you're saying. And then you dance again with your thumbs up. A tootie-ta, a tootie-ta, a tootie-ta-ta, a tootie-ta, a tootie-ta, a tootie-ta-ta. Then you do thumbs up, elbows back, elbows back. And so each verse, you're adding another action. So it's building on that working memory. So they have to remember that they have to have their thumbs up, and then they add in those elbows back. And then they do sillier and sillier actions every time you do it. And I don't know about others, but I was just dancing at my house, and it looks like some of you guys were dancing and singing during that as well. And Melody, you mentioned, oh, sorry, I just lost it. Yes, in the imaginary period, there are definitely steps and activity that has to happen in their work, in their activities, for sure. Like, and then the older child, for instance, in my house, and Melody, you have similar aged children in your house, they always tell, no, you're not doing it right. You have to do this first. So yes, there are definitely steps when you're doing your imaginary play. Okay, does anybody have any questions about working memory before we move on? Working memory in older children, it's definitely just that repetition of activities. So practicing it over and over again. And sometimes pictures can help too, especially if they have developmental delays, or if they're very visual learners. If they have that visual piece to it, can really help. Yes, asking children to help remember the morning errands is a really great way to help them and you, because sometimes you might forget that errand and they will remember it. I oftentimes will, when we go to my parents' house, they have a code to get into their neighborhood, and I can never remember the code for the life of me. But before we leave, I'm like, okay, Scarlett, can you remember the code to get into Grammy's house? And she will tell it to me, so that way I can remember it later. And it's a great way to help me as well as her. Okay, so now we're going to move on to cognitive flexibility. So cognitive flexibility helps people shift gears when they're doing things. And this is a really difficult task for a lot of us, to shift our focus from one activity to another. But it is a key part of problem solving, because if you get too focused on one thing, you need to be able to pull yourself away from that and move on to the next thing and think about, okay, so that didn't work, so I need to change my thinking and try something else. It also helps in planning our tasks. So an example of this, the routine at school is different than the home routine. I think we've all experienced this a lot in the last few months. So the routine for online learning is very different than the routine for in-school learning. So the kids have to be able to have that cognitive flexibility to understand, okay, so I'm doing online learning today, so instead of doing these things that I do at school, I need to do these things instead. So for instance, my daughter, being in kindergarten, she, at school, they do most of the same activities that they do at home, but they do in much quicker succession, and they're combined together quite a bit. Whereas in school, they have a lot more space between those activities, and there's more downtime. And so we've come up with ways to help with this situation, and she has her own routine at home versus her routine at school. And so when we're doing online learning, during her 15-minute play break, she knows that she gets to go downstairs and she gets to swing on her swing. We have a net swing, down in our basement that she just spins and spins and spins and spins on. And so she knows that's part of her routine that she gets to be able to do when she's at online school versus when she's in school. But she's figured out other ways during her play breaks at school to be able to reorganize her body at school. So she has that ability to know, okay, so when I'm at school, I do this activity, but when I'm at home, I'm here. There are and then another example of this, there are multiple ways of solving a math problem. The ways that we learned how to solve math problems when we were a kid, kids is a little bit different than what kids are doing now because of the Common Core standards. And also, a lot of the things that they're doing now, it may not make sense to us because of the way that we learned it, but it makes total sense to our kids because that's the way they learned it. And sometimes it's a lot easier, but we have to learn in our brain, and we have to build those new neural pathways to teach our kids and help our kids with math. And then rules to a game are different in different settings. So a great example of this is we went on a vacation this past spring before all of this, and we had a bunch of kids that were all preschoolers, and they all love playing Uno, but every single family had different rules to the game. So as adults, we had to sit down and be like, okay, so what are your rules to the game? What are your rules to the game? And we had to figure it out for ourselves of like, okay, so let's focus on these rules and skip this rule that you guys have. So we have to think about that, and then teaching that to the kids and saying, okay, so we may play like this at home, but we're going to play it like this here. So every child has a different rules to those games, and it's really important to remember that. Okay, so now we are going to play a game together to build your cognitive flexibility and realize how kids have a hard time with their cognitive flexibility, and we're going to make your brains think real hard. So in this next slide, I'm going to have you read the words that you see, and once you're done, just either raise your hand or type in the chat. The raise your hand feature is at the very top of the screen, and it just has a little handprint. Oh, I see some hands going up already. You guys are super fast, awesome readers. Way to go. Okay, you guys are good readers. Now we're going to try this again. And with the next slide, I'm going to have you guys say the color name in the word. So here we go. So instead of saying or doing the word, you're going to say the color name in your head. You're a bit slower this time. Yeah, it's a lot harder to say those color words than just reading the words, because we have so innately built it in our brain. We've built those neurological pathways in our brain so effectively to read that when we switch the task and make you do something different with those same words, it's a lot harder. So you have to think a lot harder when you're doing that. And that's that cognitive flexibility. You're having to switch your thinking and you're switching that task when you're doing something. So it's really important to have to stop and think about what you're doing and then do it. So you have to build that cognitive flexibility. And just remember, that's the way kids are feeling a lot of the time when we are telling them to, okay, so you did it this way, but now I need you to do it this way, or whatever it is. Or, you know, at school when they do it one way and then they have to relearn how to do it at home. Like, that's really hard for them. So we have to think through what they're doing and help them to be able to switch those tasks. And remember that it's going to take them more time unless they've had practice doing it. Okay. So what do we do, or could we do, to help children build their cognitive flexibility? Throw it in the chat. Games like charades and celebrities, yeah, like, because then you're really having to think through it. Yes, just any games in general are really good for building that cognitive flexibility and then changing the rules on them. My husband always says that my dad changes the rules when they play cribbage every time, and he's like, but I learned it this way. Learning new songs in games is really a good way to do it. Yeah, learning new songs is a good one. Imagining, oh, wait, oh, just missed that one. What if games. So games imagining substitutions for foods, or what if they had to do this in the dark? Yeah, so having them to think through what they would do in certain situations, that's a really good way to help kids learn. Preparing kids for change, yes, letting them know today is going to be different. That is so important for kids, because they really need to think through what is different today versus yesterday, or what is going to be different tomorrow. We oftentimes do in our house, like, okay, in 3 sleeps, we're going to do such and such, so that they can prepare their brains and prepare their thinking of like, okay, it's going to be a little different on this date. Puzzles is also a really, really good one, because they have to think through of what makes sense and turning those pieces around. Okay, so some other ideas for cognitive flexibility. So with babies, modifying peekaboo games. So adding on things and changing the game. So instead of you always covering your face, maybe you give the cloth or whatever it is you're playing peekaboo with to the child and see if they can start playing peekaboo too. Or doing funny faces when you do the peekaboo games. Whatever it is, just modifying those peekaboo games a little bit. Changing the words to songs. I always love adding my own kids' names to the songs, or just changing or using a tune and just singing random songs with different words. And the kids are like, huh, I didn't realize that could be done. And doing silly things with objects. And older kids do this all the time with their imaginary play, but it's good to show kids that they can do it when they're just babies. And then building together, because when you're building together, you're not creating the same thing twice. So if you do Legos or Duplos with those babies, or just building with just basic blocks and just manipulating the pieces and showing them all sorts of different ways to do it, it's a really good way to do it. There we go. Okay, so with toddlers, changing the motions for the songs. So instead of clapping your hands, stomping your feet. And then doing things incorrectly. My favorite thing to do in story time is to start reading the book upside down. And they're like, you're doing this wrong. What are you doing? Like, you are completely wrong. And they think it's hilarious that you don't know what you're doing and that they get to tell you what to do, which is really fun too. And then making predictions is really good for them to understand, like, okay, I think this is what's going to happen. And as their language skills get more and more developed, this is more and more fun, because they'll come up with some really cool predictions and a lot of interesting things. And then matching and sorting games. Incorrect animal sounds. Yes, Melody. Incorrect animal sounds is a perfect one for doing things incorrectly too. And then matching and sorting games is a really good one, so that they can understand how to organize things, but then change it up on them. So you may have like a bunch of multicolored shapes. So one time you're going to have them sort it by triangles or by shape, and then the next time you might have them sort it by colors. So that way they have to think through and how they're doing it and what they're doing. And then finally, for those preschoolers, Using found objects for play. As I mentioned before, like with the babies, just showing them how to do that is really important. But then, like when they get to be preschoolers, they're just going to do it, and they have so much fun doing it. I mean, I have seen so many crazy things being used in my house as a wand recently. I just never know what is going to become a wand or a cape or a crown. I have girls. I don't know if you could tell. But yeah, so both girls are just wands and capes and tiaras. Everything that we own is a wand, a cape, or a tiara to be able to create that with. Or a veil. Like when you take off your clothes and your shirt is still on your head, it becomes a veil. I don't know if you guys knew this or not. So it's really important, or it's really fun to watch them develop this skill. Making up stories together. So you may start a story and just give them a topic and then just let them go and see what happens. Those story cubes, if you haven't seen them, are fantastic for this. So they're really fun. Like you just roll the dice and you see what comes up, and then they get to make a story up out of the pictures that they see. And then using complex movements and rhythms for songs. So instead of just clapping our hands, we can just make a rhythm of patting our thighs and then clapping our hands, patting our thighs and then clapping our hands. And then maybe we add some snaps in there too. And then puzzles. Somebody mentioned puzzles earlier. It's a great one. And now I'm going to read through these comments because you guys all exploded on this one. So yes, Dark George is a fantastic book for that building that cognitive flexibility of understanding, like, wait a second, that is not correct. And they think it's so funny. Hello, that shirt. Yes, the shirt does become gorgeous hair at times as well. Yes, and pants on your head is so much fun. I mean, who doesn't love to put pants on their head and do crazy things? I've seen some amazing things done with clothes in my life recently. Okay. And then finally, our last piece of this is inhibitory control. This is also known as self-regulation. And this is a really big buzzword in our world right now of that self-regulation, understanding how to control our bodies and how to control our emotions. So it's really important to be able to think through these things, stop and think for kids, and be able to slow their bodies down and think through their emotions and understand those emotions. It's really, really, really important. And it's one of those things, if they don't get it, have the ability to start doing it at a young age, it's a lot harder to teach. All of this is, but self-regulation is a really, really apparent one. So, come on. There it goes. So some examples of this. Some of you guys may have seen videos of the marshmallow test, and if you haven't, we're going to watch one in just a second. And then not check, or so another example of this is not checking your phone immediately when it buzzes. That's a really hard one. I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time with that. I actually had a somebody that chatted me in the middle of this on my work chat, and I'm trying to hold off not answering it and reading it right now because I'm like, I really need to. I need to. And it's that part of self-regulation of trying to control our body and trying to stop and finish what we're doing and then move on to the next thing. And then for kids, holding that shaker egg without shaking it, oh my gosh, that is like the hardest thing for any kid to have to do, right? So they are sitting there and they're like, oh my gosh, I just want to shake this egg. It's so exciting. I just want to make it make so much noise. Holding the parachute is another example of this. Oh my gosh, you just want to shake that egg because you want to make that amazing noise. Somebody just mentioned in the chat, as a neurodiverse person, I wish I'd been taught this when I was younger. Yes, for sure. If you can teach kids, especially kids with ADD or ADHD, if they can build those self-regulation skills and their inhibitory control early on, and giving them outlets to be able to build those skills, it's really, really helpful throughout their entire lives. My mom used to teach me, she was an occupational therapist. So she taught me appropriate fidgets versus inappropriate fidgets when you're in social settings. And I think that has really, really stuck with me because I have some family members that do have ADD and ADHD. And so just thinking through like what is appropriate fidgeting and what is not appropriate fidgeting. And so, giving kids that ability to like, okay, so it's okay to draw and doodle while you're in class, but it's not okay to jump around and be a monkey during class. So thinking through those things. Okay, so we're going to watch the marshmallow test, and Christine is going to throw the link in the chat because the videos on Adobe don't actually play. So she's going to throw the link in the chat, and I'm going to have you guys watch the video, and then when you raise your hand when you come back, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like most of you have returned. I hope you enjoyed the marshmallow test because I think it's such a good explanation of what is really happening with those kids, and thinking about like how they are feeling and how hard it is. And I'm sure that some of you guys saw this summer, there was a lovely TikTok wonderfulness of this happening with kids. Somebody said that the looks on their face are priceless, and it's so true because they're just like so frustrated and they're just so wanting to eat that marshmallow. And on those TikTok videos this summer, so many kids, they did it with younger kids and just all ranges of kids, and some of them were just like, I'm just gonna eat all of this candy because they haven't developed that skill yet. But the more they practice, the better they get at it. So giving those kids that chance to wait. And we have a song, we're having a very hard time with patience and waiting in our house now. And you guys may have heard this song before, but we now sing anytime that kids have to have patience, like have patience, don't be in such a hurry. And they're like, excuse me, not cool. But yeah, so they are really having to think through all of that stuff and just hold on to wait and have that patience. And waiting is so hard for kids. It's unbearable sometimes. So what can we do, or what could we do to help kids build their inhibitory control? Delaying the freeze dance, yes. Yes, the freeze song is such a great one. Counting to 3 before starting a race, yes. And distraction, yes, distraction is a great one to help build that self-regulation. And then positive reinforcement, yes. Just thinking through, okay, so they did this, so then they can get that reward. And choices, yes, choices are such a good one for helping kids to really think through what they can and can't do. And making sense. My almost 4-year-old has now chosen to not choose any of the choices, and then she says, "That's not the choice." And it's like, okay, you've gamed me on this system here. So yeah, it's definitely hard. But yeah, waiting to have their scarves handed out and really wanting that specific color of a shaker or a scarf. That one's a really hard one. So yeah, just thinking through all of those things to help them build that inhibitory control is really important. And helping them to wait and take turns is a good thing too. Yeah. Nadia, I have tried you get choice or one or two, or I will pick. Yeah. We've tried that, but then she continues to say that is not the choice. So yeah, we've been working on it very hard. Oh. So here's some other ideas for inhibitory control. Um, Bounces that start and stop for those babies, like that immediately helps them learn how to stop their bodies because they're like, I'm bouncing, I'm bouncing, I'm bouncing. Oh, I stopped. And that slowing down, so going fast and slow with your shaking of your scarves or your just your shaker eggs or bouncing really fast. One of my favorite baby songs is Rough Road, because you start really slow and you go down a smooth road, a smooth road, a smooth road, and then you go down a bumpy road, and then you go down a rough road, and you get faster and faster, and the bounces get faster and harder. And so it's really developing that sense of stopping and starting. Focusing on one activity at a time. Your babies especially don't need a million choices. If they just have that one or two choices, like it works much better for them, and they're happier because then they're not so overwhelmed, and it helps them to build that control of like, okay, I'm playing with this and I'm super happy and I'm going to continue playing with this. And then just practice waiting. So even when my babies were little, sometimes they have to practice waiting before they can get a bottle or get milk. And even with food. So yeah, it's really important to just give them that time to practice waiting. And then most importantly, don't give in. And that really does start at a young age. Okay, so with toddlers, like I mentioned with the babies, changing the speed of the song. Free songs are great for this, especially the silly dance contest where they get to dance really, really, really fast and then really slow and do all sorts of different movements. Just books with movement in general, because they have to do that movement and then they have to stop and sit back down, or just stop their bodies. Talking about feelings is a really, really important one with them too. Talking about like, I can see that you're frustrated right now. I can see that you're upset. So they understand how their body is feeling, and so that they can start controlling those emotions and thinking about, how am I feeling right now and how can I get out of this? So those mindfulness activities is really good to start with those toddlers, of breathing exercises, and just like different activities to help them control those feelings. And again, don't give in. So don't tell them no and then all of a sudden change your mind and let them in. Let them have what they want, because that is not building their self-regulation, because they're just like, well, if I scream long enough, then somebody's going to give it to me, so it's fine. And that's not going to help. And then finally, with preschoolers, we talked about freeze games are so fantastic. And the more you practice these, the better the kids get at freezing. It's so fun to watch toddlers in a toddler story time versus preschoolers, and then kindergartners, in their ability to be able to freeze. Because when they're toddlers, they're like moving all around still and dancing. And then there's like, oh, well, everybody else is freezing. Maybe I should stop. And then with preschoolers, they're like, okay, I'm really ready to move again. I want to move. I want to move. I want to move. And then they start going as fast as they can. And then those kindergartners, they actually freeze, and it's amazing. Taking turns talking, and in activities that require focus. So letting them have that time. I know a lot of kids would just sit and do one activity for a really long time if they just have that ability and are allowed to be able to do it. Because so often in our society, we're like, go, 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 go. We got to move on to the next thing. And that makes it really hard for them to actually focus. And then finally, again, don't give in. It's really, really important. So how does this all affect us long term? So I want you to look at these 3 sets of skills for kindergartners, adults, and then the executive function skills. And I want you to just type in the chat real fast what you see that is what's going on there. They're the same, yes. So they are completely the same skills that we need as kindergartners and adults. They just have different names. So we want to be able to make sure that we are building those skills when kids are young so they are effective as adults. So we want to make sure that, because when you're in a job interview, one of the biggest things that they ask you, are you a team player? Are you a critical thinker? Can you communicate with others? And those are the important skills that we need to know. And running out of time, so I'm going to zoom through a couple of these. But if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to stay past 1 o'clock. So start learning these executive function skills at a very young age. So they're starting to learn them, and then they top out really in our early to mid 20s is when the kids really, and young adults have really figured out all of this stuff. So when they're about 4 years old, they really need to start working very hard on those executive function skills, because that's when those skills really, really skyrocket. And most importantly, how do you think these kids learn these skills the best? Well, it's through play. Yes, Melody, you got it. Play is so important for kids because they need to be able to have that ability to try it and see what works and see what doesn't work. So what does this look like? It's scaffolded. So we need to give them the ability to try new things that are harder and harder and harder, and give them more tasks to be able to add to it. It establishes routines. It models social behavior. It creates and maintains supportive relationships, and this is really important because we need to have those grown-ups have that supportive relationship with them to be able to make all of this happen. It fosters creative play. It develops social connection because they're learning from each other too. And it teaches them how to cope with stress. And this is all while decreasing our adult supervision over time. So the more they learn, the less that we have to step in and help them with all of this. So kids are learning cognitive flexibility and all of these skills in all of these pictures. They're developing each of the skills through all of these activities. And there is one more video for you guys to watch, but this is also a video that you guys can watch afterwards because it is really a culmination of what we've just talked about. It's done by the Harvard Center of the Harvard Center for Developing Children, and it's phenomenal. So what questions, comments, or last thoughts do you have? Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that you found it super helpful. And yes, it does. And this not only works with kids, but it does work with adults too. So it's stuff that we can teach adult caregivers to help with their kids and learn for themselves too.
Lisa, Melody had a question about any specific tips or activities for coping with stress.
You know, it's definitely building that routine is the biggest thing, and guiding them through their stress. It's so hard. Like we've all had the situation recently that kids are they are stressed out and they are anxious and they are having a hard time, but helping them to see the steps involved with things and talking them through their feelings about it is really important to be able to help them cope with that stress. And that's the biggest thing, is just talking them through it and giving them examples and help.
And just quickly, while we're waiting to see if additional questions come in, I added the videos that Lisa talked about, as well as a PDF of the slides, to the CSL In Session website. And I have just posted a survey link in the chat. We would love, love, love to have your feedback on today's session. But do, if you have any additional questions for Lisa, please continue typing those in the chat.
And for those of you that have to leave, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you learned something today. And you can feel free to email me, or, and I think I have my email in here. Nope, I don't. But I'm sure Christine, or actually I can type it into the chat for you. But yeah, feel free to email me, contact me anytime if you have more questions.
So Lisa gave you her email address, and I posted the CSL In Session website in the chat as well. So if you can access, hopefully within the next hour or so, I'll have the full archive, as well as some additional resources and whatnot. And just one last thing is I'm going to put my email in the chat for anybody who needs a certificate. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming through chat. If you do have any, don't hesitate to post them. But I do want to thank Lisa for sharing all of her great and fabulous information with us today. As somebody posted in the chat earlier, she was able to kind of really break down a complex topic, and we really appreciate her expertise. So thank you, Lisa.